Things are not going well for me. At all. I opened the hatch and, God, how I wish I hadn't. I wish I hadn't found the button and ever known about this place. I wish I never saw the girl in my camera. I shouldn't have listened to any suggestions. I know it. I know it's going to bite me in the ass. I should have just stayed away from all of this. I left you all on a cliffhanger, and for that, I'm sorry. I spent the rest of yesterday thinking and deciding on what the hell to do. I was going to call the police, but they weren't going to take the time to look at some weird door in my garage. I'm not trying to get thrown into a psych ward either. I figured that maybe the girl was there at other times of the day, not just in the morning. Maybe if she was really trying to contact me, trying to get me to help or something, then she would keep trying. I don't own any recording devices other than my phone, so I tried using it. It was still lights out around 3 p.m. when I tried, but she wasn't there. I looked around everywhere, on the road, in the yard and garage, but didn't see anything. It must only work in the dark. So I waited till the sun went down, and lo and behold, she was there. It's weirder not being in the car and seeing it. She was there, in the road again and on my phone screen. But I couldn't see her with my own eyes. This time, she had a slight smile on her face, and I could get closer. She seemed so sweet, but looked so sickly, so pale. I couldn't tell before, but her eyes were so dark, almost black. It scared me, but that smile was so disarming. This time, she didn't run towards the house. She walked, almost skipping and leading me on towards the garage. We met at the garage door and I opened it for her. She seemed to just float right on in. She looked at me, then over to the workbench and pointed. I finally spoke up and said to her, "Who are you? What's in that hatch? This is so weird." She just pointed to herself, then again to the door. That must be it. She must be trapped in there, or her body, at least. Maybe it was accidental, or maybe the old man put her there. I don't know. My mind was racing, and I was sweating profusely. And it wasn't even hot out. And my heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I asked her, "Are you down there? Do you need me to open the door?" She nodded, pointing to herself and then the bench. She seemed to glide over to it, and pointed right to where the switch was. "I know, I found it yesterday. Did you make it?" She seemed to be getting a little agitated, pointing at herself and then at the switch. "You have to tell me. What's down there? Did someone hurt you? Is someone going to hurt me?" Now she looked angry. She started to point at herself, but with a lot of force, almost pushing a finger into her chest. She kept doing that now, as her hands started to vanish inside of her chest, and a black slime or ooze was left on her hand. I started to back up and she stopped, looking away from me, then back with a smile. She almost looked sad, smiling and pointing at me. She then walked inside the bench and down what I could only assume were stairs. Before I knew it, she was gone. But something else started happening. The hatch under the bench started to shake, I think. It sounded like someone or something was trying to get out. I dropped my phone and the light turned off, leaving me in the dark. I ran inside my house. I could almost hear the knocking of the hatch inside while I looked for a flashlight. I sat for a moment, gathered my thoughts, and ran back into the garage. I went over and clicked the button under the bench. As soon as I did, the hatch stopped shaking. I stood before it, trembling. I don't know why, but I needed to open it. I needed to know that some poor person wasn't on the other side trying to get out. I couldn't sleep knowing that could be the case. Seeing it a second time, I now noticed the small padlock next to the handle. It looked to be really old and was pretty rusty in spots. I don't own any bolt cutters, but I do have an old wood axe. I ran around back and grabbed it. I put all the force I had into a few swings, and the lock broke off. Hesitantly, I opened the hatch. The entrance was pitch black, and all I could see was the start of a few dirt steps leading down. My flashlight barely worked against the darkness. It was so strange. I took a few steps in, and it seemed like the air was frigid. I could see my breaths. There were maybe 10 steps down, so it was fairly deep into the tunnel. That's what it seemed like anyhow. A small tunnel, but tall enough to stand up in. I could feel the walls, as if I reached out both my arms. When I reached the bottom, I could make out a faint glow down the corridor. I don't know if it was a light or a fire or something. I inched my way down the hall and started to hear humming. It was a low humming, but it was something like a song. It was faint, but I could tell it was at the end of the hall. I made it down to the opening, and it was the entrance to a rather large carved-out room. All of the walls looked to be dirt, except for one. A few sconces were lit up and hanging. There was a portion of stone with a small wooden chair in the middle of the space. Almost looked like a throne of some sort. In front of it was a small altar, I think, with different colored stones and what I think was animal bones. I still heard the humming, but it sounded like it was coming from all around me. I could tell it was a female now. It had to be her. Without thinking, I yelled out to her. "Hey, are you down here? I'm here to help you." The humming stopped. Now the room was completely silent. Not a draft or a creak. The sounds of chains clinking broke the silence, coming from behind the makeshift throne. My eyes were still adjusting, but I could tell it was her, or some version of her. She crept out with her head held low, limping, I think, making a low humming noise again. Her hair seemed more matted, and once she got closer, I could tell she looked to be much older than before. She wore nothing but a white gown, almost like a hospital gown. She made her way over to me, and as I tried to move, I couldn't. I didn't realize before, but I couldn't move a muscle. It felt like I had been frozen and could only stand there and watch as she crept toward me. There were cuffs and chains wrapped around her ankles that rattled with every step. As she got within inches of me, she raised her head, and I can't get the image out of my mind. Her eyes were black as night. No pupils, no white, nothing. It felt like I was staring into an abyss. Her mouth had been cut at the seams, and it almost hung there until she rehinged it and licked her lips. I threw up on myself. She started to back up, then pointed at me. She drew near again and pressed her finger to my forehead. I blacked out. I woke up hours later, in my bed. I still had bile and puke on my clothes, but I was neatly tucked into bed. I jumped up and ran into a different room. I locked the door and sat there for a while, trying to make heads or tails of what the hell happened. I ran back out and grabbed my phone and called the police. They made it over to the house quickly, and I told them everything. They seemed skeptical, of course. I showed them into the garage, and we checked the bench. There was no switch. It was gone. I freaked out, pulling at the bench, clawing at the wood trying to get it to move. The police stopped me and asked if I was on any medications. I told them no and tried calming myself down. I think they wanted to take me to get evaluated, but I managed to calm down enough to show them out. It's morning, and I'm sitting here now in my bed, the door locked and my dresser blocking it. What the fuck happened to me last night? Did I dream it all? I know I didn't. It couldn't have been. It's been happening for days. I can hear something in my house now. Sounds like scratching and footsteps. Maybe I left the door open and an animal got inside. I don't know. I can't think straight. I need to sleep. I can barely keep my eyes open. I'll let you all know how it goes. I hope the noises stop.